Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of Board of Trustees is present, that the meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The purpose of the work study session is to review the board agenda items that will be presented at the regular school board meeting. During the board work session, board members may discuss and ask questions concerning any of the items listed on the agenda. The board will not take action on items presented during the board work session. The board will take action on all agenda items at the regular school board meeting. After the invocation, I will turn the meeting over to Dr. Smith. Mr. Kennedy, would you lead us in the invocation?
I'll stand, please, and join our prayer if you're ready. Dear God, we thank you for this day and for the rain and what it does for our ground and our earth. We ask that you bless us always and be with us. And dear God, we ask you to bless the administrators and teachers and students in this district, that we all come together and do the best that we can do. We ask these things in thy name. Amen.
Amen. All right, thank you, Madam President. Good evening, board members and staff. We're going to go ahead and get started with our work study session. So on Monday, we'll begin at the regular school board meeting. We'll begin with superintendent's report. We'll start off with my report, where I'll give a brief overview of some of the key district events that are going on or have been going on since last board meeting, any information that is pertinent, and updates on various programs. Then we'll transition to our monthly bond update. I'm going to call Ms. Andre Fields up to provide the monthly bond update.
Good evening to President McNeely and board members and Dr. Smith and staff members. It is my pleasure this evening to do a recap of the 2014 bond program. I have for you a PowerPoint presentation which really kind of reflects over the work that has been done by this community, the board and the staff. And so, of course, just recapping our new construction and expanded facilities. You see there, of course, the replacement of Acton Elementary, the cost of it, and the check, and a 100 that we've completed that, and students are in school this year. Replacement of Hastings Elementary School, there you see the cost for that as well. And then Hyman and Kennemer Middle School expansions, which were completed really several months ago. So we just wanted to highlight that for you in new construction and expanded facilities. Our district-wide upgrades. We have, of course, with your technology and aging facilities, and safety and security, and you see those package 1 complete, package 2 complete. As I've been standing the last few months sharing the bond update every month, I've shared with you that there's still some things we're trying to finesse with some of the safety security, but for the most part, everything's working, our card access, etc. Of course, technology upgrades, both of those packages 1 and 2 are complete. Under aging facilities, just as a reminder, Daniel Intermediate School received its update and upgrades on last school year. You've granted us the approval to move forward with packages 1, 2, and 3, and I have for you highlighted there on the screen the campuses that are included in those packages. This encompasses about $14.3 million, and they are in progress. We've begun the work, and we're going to share some of those pictures here in just a moment. And so with package 3, that of course is our fire alarm and our PA systems, along with some other allowances that you approved for us last month. Under North Star's report tonight, we just kind of want to share with you, we are engaged in progress with aging facilities, and you can see some of the work, of course, there in phase 1. The ADA compliance with our restrooms that we're upgrading, and sections 1 and 3 there at Alexander and Smith. We've made the place safe so that the work can begin. Plumbing and electrical rough ends are in progress, and rebar and concrete pour back to be scheduled. And so you kind of see some of the work. These pictures were probably about 2 weeks ago, so we probably, because we have to submit them early, we've made a lot more progress. At Hardin Elementary, which is where we started, Phase 1, Block 900, we've, of course, made things safe there, and it's complete. The plumbing and electrical rough ends in progress, and tiling and flooring of surfaces have been scheduled. And anticipating the work at these first 2 or 3 campuses to be complete by the end of November. And then at Duncanville High School in the auditorium, as we shared with you, of course, there you see again that they've done the electrical and plumbing, making it safe. Some selective demolition has been completed, and new partition installation is to be scheduled. And finally, just to kind of recap, you see there, Hardin, they've begun quite a bit of work. A lot of progress has been made. Central Elementary and Fair Meadows going to be turned over to North Star in the coming weeks. They've done some preliminary work, prep work there to make everything safe. And then you see the campuses, again, Merrifield, Byrd, and Reed start dates. We'll be working on the schedule so that we can work with the principals to make sure that they're aware of the work. Are there any questions?
No questions on the bond update? Anything you would like for us to clarify? We're all clear on the bond update? Okay.
All right,
Thank
thank
Ms.
you.
Fields. We appreciate that. The next item that you'll hear on Monday night is a monthly finance and budget update. And I ask Ms. Jan Arrington, our CFO, to come and review that information for you.
Thank you, Mrs. McNeely, members of the board, and Dr. Smith. The budget amendment report is listed for you starting on page 22 in your board book. On Monday, we'll be asking you to vote on the approval of this budget amendment report. So let's take a look at the spreadsheet on page 23 that details the proposed budget amendments. The first section relates to the general operating budget, and we have proposed revisions to increase revenues and expenditures by $162,250, which relate to the dual credit program. You can see under the column for proposed amendments that there are other additions and reductions to budgets that are between existing budgets to realign the department and campus budgets between the functions. The overall net change to these revisions and transfers produces no change to the general operating fund balance. That middle section is the child nutrition budget, and there are no proposed revisions or changes to the child nutrition fund or budget. And that last section relates to the debt service fund. And under the proposed amendments, you do see some adjustments there. We have proposed revisions to both increase and decrease revenues by $4.8 million. And that relates to the sale of the 2017 bonds that were just issued and closed in September. The other proposed revision is for just over $2 million. That also relates to the bond sale, the 2017 bond sale. That's our first interest and principal payment that will be due in February. And the impact of that revision reduces the anticipated add to fund balance down to $48,360. So at the end of the year, we should still anticipate adding to your debt service fund balance. Are there any questions about the?
I've got
Yes, sir.
Up in this general operating budget?
Yes, sir.
This original budget, that's what we voted on, right?
Yes, sir. That's the original revenue of $106,844.
Look at the staff development. That's what we voted on, what it said originally. voted to amend it? How did it get to 3 million? It's at FNC 13.
Yes, sir. That amended budget is where we started before the current month's amendments to the budget. So in the prior months, we've moved money around between the functions. There should be some that reduce down. Let me look and see.
Because it's about $76,000. Why did we go up on that?
I'd have to look and see at the detail, and I'll get the detail for what they're, if it was a revision or if it was just a cross-function transfer.
Explain that.
I beg your pardon?
Explain that.
Oh, okay. Just like if you look over in that column, proposed amendments, you see some that are additions and some that are subtractions. Cross-function transfers net to zero, but it's a change from what the original function was, where we planned, okay, in staff development. We proposed at the very beginning of the fiscal year to spend $2.9 million in Function 13. As the year goes on, it may be that Function 11 requires more budget than staff development, and so we'll just transfer an equal dollar amount into Function 11 and out of 13. That's what those cross-function transfers do, just move between the functions, but we're legally required to have board approval to move the funds between the functions.
And you'll follow up and do some research and get the details on what that was, and we'll provide that back out to the board.
Absolutely. Right, because if you look down at the bottom of the amended budget column there, and you see negative $186,130, that's made up of several revisions that have been brought to the board in the months since we adopted the budget in July. I can tell you that one of those, like if you look in Function 51, you can see our original budget was $11,199,000, and it's gone up to $11,370,000. We had a revision for, I believe, about $85,000 to increase our property and casualty budget, because the proposal provided to us by our carrier showed an increase in the premium of $85,000 over last year's payment, and I only budgeted the property and casualty insurance budget to be exactly what it was last year without knowing what the increase would be. So does that make sense? Those kind of things are what make up that $186,000, but I'll get you.
Yeah, they do. Thanks.
I'm sorry, okay.
I got some other thoughts, but I'll keep them to myself.
I would be happy to, really, I'm going to
No,
research
they're not
Function
for you,
13.
they're for other things. Go ahead. I'm fine.
Okay. Then we will move on to the financial and investment reports that are listed for you starting on page number 24 in your board book. On Monday, we'll be asking you to vote on the approval of the attached financial investment reports. So let's take a look at the spreadsheets attached to the executive summary. These reports reflect the results of operations through August. The first report relates to the general operating fund on page number 25.
We're ready, let's go.
Okay, both revenues and expenditures are tracking closely to the same levels as what we were at the same point last year. August represents being 16% into the fiscal year. However, if you look at our revenues, we've only collected 0.7%, and our expenditures are at 5%. So that's still on track with what we usually expect at this point in the year. Most of our big revenue collections come in September. So we'll start the catch-up with our revenue in September, and we'll also start to see the catch-up in September with our expenditures, because that's the first big payroll month when our teachers return on their new contracts. Are there any questions about the general operating financials? Okay, then if we go to the next spreadsheet, this is our child nutrition activity, and it's tracking as well as general operating in the current year fairly closely to where we were at the same point in the prior year. Then if we look at the next spreadsheet, this would be our debt service financials. And we are tracking in this fund as well closely to where we were at the same point last year. I would just point out, if you look on the debt service schedule, you see under year-to-date activity, down under expenditures, we had $4.7 million that were expended, and that's our semi-annual principal and interest payments on our debt that we made in August. And so you'll see another large expenditure in February. Are there any questions about those financials? Okay, then I'd like for us to go ahead and take a look at the next schedule. And this reflects our activity, a more detailed look at our 2014 bond program as far as our budget to actual expenditures, and then what remains in our budget balance. And so we have listed over to the left all of the projects approved in the 2014 bond program, and the columns across to the right show each year's actual expenditures. And then what we've done over in the balance is the total of the $14.595 million is the calculated total balance as of the end of August. But the three remaining projects that have balances out there, Acton, facilities upgrades, and safety and security, have had their budgets consolidated from the other projects that have closed out. Some of those other projects did have excess budget to pull from, and some were over. But that 14.595, it's important to know that that budget available at the end of August does balance to the cash that's available. That's always really important to know, is that our budget is supported by cash in the bank, and it is. Are there any questions about that schedule? Okay. Then if we could take a look at the next one. This one just summarizes in the same fashion the activity for our Collegiate Academy, because it had a different funding source from the 2014 bonds. This one is tracked separately. And again, you can see over at the far right, at the end of August, we had $446,000 available budget, or $446,000 cash. Any questions about the Collegiate Academy project? Okay.
Is it complete? Is it complete?
It is, yes, sir. The next schedule is our investment report, and it shows the district's holdings and interest-bearing accounts, which are in 4 investment pools that you can see listed over to the left: Lone Star, Texas Class, Tex Pool, and Logic. And what's important to note is under ending balance at the end of August 31st, 2017, you have over $66 million invested in investment pools at the end of August. Are there any questions about the investment report? Okay. And then finally, what we have for you to consider are donations made to the district. And you have two. You have one from Barnes & Noble with 12 boxes of discontinued items at a value of $100 per box. And then you have an individual donation of $300 for 4 recipients to use at the district's media center. Are there any questions about the donations or any other of the schedules in the district's financial and investment package?
Everybody okay with the monthly finance updates? Any questions, clarification? We're good? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arrington. So after we get the monthly finance and budget updates, we'll transition to the consent agenda items. The first item you see is a reflection of the September 11th, 2017 minutes. It's basically just capturing the minutes from the last board meeting. That is for your review. If you have any questions about that prior to Monday, reach out to me, and of course we'll address any questions that you have. Then we'll have budget amendments. Of course, Ms. Arrington just reviewed the budget amendments with you in the monthlies. And so again, if you have any questions between now and then, something that you think of that maybe is not clear, don't have the question at this point in time, we'll provide answers for you. Same on the financial reports. You've been provided with an overview of that information. We'll get that back out to you as well if you have any questions between now and Monday. So then we'll transition to item D on the consent agenda, and that's declaring inventory as a surplus property. And Mrs. Andre Fields is the lead on that, and we're ready to present.
And good evening again. We have for your consideration next week a declaration of inventory as surplus property. And of course, this is in line with policy CI legal, in which all rights and titles to district property, whether real or personal, shall be vested to you, board members, and your successors in office. And the board may dispose of property that is no longer necessary for the district's operation as appropriate. So next week, we will be asking you to declare the attached, and it's in your board book. There are several vehicles there that have served their time well, and we're asking you to allow us to retire those, and you have the list there. You have a key as well for your review that shares with you the reason why most of the vehicles and most of the property here listed is number 5, which is retired and just really, if I could say, just plain worn out. It's worn out. We're not able to use them. And then, of course, you see there's a golf cart and a Toro mower there. And then one of the vehicles, you see number 3 there, is captured with the key of number 10 for scrap. So we've worked on those. We've tried to keep them on the street, and so it's time to retire them. So next week we'll be asking you for your approval. Any questions?
Everybody okay on that? Good? Okay.
All
Thank
right,
you, Ms.
thank
Fields.
you.
We'll then transition to our action items. The first action item is item A, request to TEA, our Texas Education Agency, for maximum class size waiver. Mr. Kreiksberg will provide the information for the board.
Good evening, President McNeely, trustees, and Dr. Smith. Come to you to review with the consideration for your approval of submission of the maximum class size exception waiver to TEA. Anytime a section in kinder through 4th grade exceeds 22 students in ratio to 1 teacher, then we're required to submit an exception waiver for each and every class. And that is continues throughout the year. Each time that occurs, typically on a monthly basis, all the way up until the final 12 weeks of school. Then it's no longer required at that time. Submitted, I believe, on page 37 of your board book is a listing of the elementary campuses, then grade level, kinder through fourth, and the number of sections for each campus that exceed 22 to 1. And this was on September 29th, Friday, September 29th. There may be some adjustments, hopefully fewer, when we receive your approval on the 16th, next Monday. And then that following day, we'll submit online the waiver requests for those exceptions. And also, the following page, page 30, I believe, is a required maximum class size waiver compliance plan. With that, we basically give a reason, that is recent closures of some area charter schools, but also just increased enrollment this year for our school district and at those grade levels as well. We have maxed out on the use of our available classroom space through some of our specialized programs, reading intervention and also math intervention. All of our available spaces are being utilized for instruction. Our action plan for compliance is that we will, again in the spring, review our demographic projections, determine areas of expected growth. We will identify campus spaces possibly that could be used as classrooms in the future that currently are not. We also, through the Human Resources Department, their plan is to develop and implement an innovative teacher recruiting program designed to proactively attract qualified teachers. So we will also address that as far as certified personnel for this next year. Are there any questions?
Just curious, when we do a waiver, and that's to go over 22, is that right?
Anytime it's over 22.
How many, I mean, can we stick 40 or 50 in there? Or do
Well,
we,
there's not
can we
physical
just do
space.
5 or 6 or what? Is there any limit on how far we can go?
Well, the campuses do a good job of balancing. Say if you have 4 sections of a 4th grade class, and total enrollment is over 88 for that, then we'll you try to balance so that each teacher at that grade level will have the same number of students. So it may be 23 each or 24 each, up to 25.
So we're not going to 30, 35?
No, not.
Up to 25.
not-
Up to 25.
That's the goal. Okay, won't say that that is the largest class that we have. But also, personnel has also done a great job recently of balancing where there are maybe some personnel units on one campus that really are not needed. They've been already moved to another campus to take care of the overload there. Also internally, may have moved a 2nd grade teacher to 4th grade or 1st to kinder. All of that balancing has taken place during the month of September. So we're at a point to where we're pretty sure this is what we'll have. Typically, our enrollment will begin to drop just a little bit in November. That's the historical pattern. So if we do have some sections that increase in the future, we'll again have to submit a waiver for exception to class size at that time. Also, with this proposal, we're asking that you approve for Dr. Smith to approve those waivers, any future waivers that we may have in the current year, but certainly keeping you apprised of any waivers that are submitted. Yes, ma'am.
Have we ever had 50 classes? That just seems like an unusually high number.
Well,
I mean,
in
50
2012-13, we had 96.
Okay.
In 13-14, we had 75.
Does it even out ever?
Well, last year we had
going out
19. We only had to do 19 waivers
To start out with, or by?
for the entire year.
Okay, so at the end of the year, there were still those 19 classes?
There are still, well, no,
So-
at that point, there may have only been, I could find out, but,
No.
okay, but no, it reduces over time. And many of these classes that will submit a waiver for class size exception at this point in time, in 2 weeks, if they're sitting at 23, they may be at 22. Or if they're sitting at 25 now, they may be at 22 in a few weeks. Some of these also include bilingual classes, so as students exit that program, that also reduces the class size for some of those bilingual sections as well.
Were there any surprise apartments or building sites? You know, we used to be notified.
Well, we have the
was
one
going
that's on
open.
Camp Wisdom that just opened. We haven't seen too much of an influx yet. They've just started renting or leasing those apartments at Eagle Crossing Apartments. So no surprises other than a pleasant increased enrollment based on some of the special programs that we're having in the district now, attracting students back from either charters or our limited open enrollment program as well has attracted a large number of students to come into our district.
I do want to raise the board's awareness too. You know, we were, as a team, we specifically set out to increase our enrollment. And so this is while it is a challenge, it's a challenge that I'm looking forward to being able to tackle, because it's a good thing that our enrollment is increasing. And it is my goal that will continue to be the trend year after year after year. Now, I do realize that presents other challenges in terms of space and in terms of class size waivers, et cetera. But in a very short period of time, you know, we've turned the tide to students exiting Duncanville ISD. And now we have the kind of specialized programs that are bringing our parents and students back. And so as a result of that, we've seen our increase in numbers pretty quickly over a pretty short period of time. So I'm happy about that. And it is my desire to continue to see that trend. And so we'll have to be proactive in preparing now for growth, because in the past, that hadn't been a challenge for the district. We've had parents choose other places to go and educate their children. So now they're coming here.
Note that our demographer, the report that he provided us last spring is very close to being what he's provided the district as far as our enrollment. So
Absolutely. You all may remember during the demographer's report, he mentioned
Templeton.
that there was a possibility that the trend could change if, at that time it was if, and of course we have followed through on our commitment to execute and implement the plans that we have, and he's right on point with the increases that we've seen. And so, again, we want to continue that. That equates dollars and other kind of positives to the district. So we continue to watch and monitor those class levels and manage them and provide the support for our principals. But that this is a good thing that we have in this challenge. We also had a charter school close.
we had Zoe Academy on Center Elementary. We received about 27 students that we could confirm from that. Focus Academy closed back at last year, at the beginning of the summer, I believe. We didn't receive that many students, just a couple from that charter closure. It was located in Dallas.
Thank you. Other questions or anything else we can clarify on the class size waiver that we'll be asking you to vote on Monday? Everybody okay?
Okay,
All right, thank you, Ms. Kreitzberg. We'll transition to action item B, which is proximity learning. Ms. Kathleen Brown will lead that. Mr. Nix is here, also our high school principal, Ms. Simmons, and members of the proximity learning team. And Ms. Kathleen Brown is going to get us started.
Okay. Good evening, President McNeely, Board of Trustees, Dr. Smith. It is my pleasure to present information to you this evening on proximity learning. As you're aware, despite all of our efforts to start the year 100% staffed, we still have some vacancies at our high school. And so as we look at the way the nation is trending with teacher fill rate, we found that over the last 7 years, there's been a 35% decrease in students who are graduating from high school and entering the teaching field. And so that is felt across the nation and is felt definitely here in the state of Texas. So in alignment with strategic goal number 1, it's been our goal to make sure we have a quality teacher in every classroom. And so we've been looking at innovative ideas and solutions to meet the needs of our students. So in our research, we've looked at proximity learning as the tool that we'd like to talk to you tonight about. So what is proximity learning? It's an online, fully accredited K-12 learning solution. The courses are built around live class sessions that are delivered via web conferencing. And so our students interact face-to-face with a live teacher during their normal class periods. So why did we look at proximity learning and want to present this one to you is the things that are listed here. One, the highly qualified instructors. We did not want to compromise the type of instructor that we wanted to provide our students here in the district, and so we looked at what type of instructors can proximity learning provide to Duncanville ISD. We also looked at the curriculum. Our curriculum is TEKS-based, our Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, and so can proximity learning provide the curriculum that we need for our students? And can they customize to our district? Duncanville ISD, we have our way of doing things, and we have the way we engage students, and so we wanted to make sure if we looked at a tool, can you customize it to meet the needs of Duncanville? We also looked at the support that they're able to provide. With any new innovation or new implementation, it's important that the partnership is one of support. And so how can proximity learning support us in this process? And we also wanted to look at their success. Who have they worked with in the past? So with highly qualified instructors, what we found is that students are interacting with a live instructor. And so that is a teacher who is with our students via the web, and they are interacting in the same manner in which our teachers would be, except that they're online, and that they are all certified in the state of Texas. That's one of the things we've talked about in the past, and that we want to make sure that everyone who is having contact with our students is highly qualified, and so these individuals are all certified in Texas, and they even have at least 5 years of teaching experience, which is not even something we require with our teachers entering into our district. The curriculum, like I said before, is TEKS-based, so it's based on those Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. And we have a standard of wanting our students to be engaged in class, and that is the same with proximity learning. And so those teachers will use a mix of live videos, games, and different activities to make sure that they're engaging the students in the instruction. How will they customize to our district? Of course, we're on a block schedule at our high school, and so these teachers who are interacting and teaching our students will be on our BEL schedule, on our AB schedule. They are even able to be present via the web for parent-teacher conference nights, open houses. The parents will be able to interact with the teacher in that way. They will follow our grading expectations and curriculum. And then one of the key points is, because we know what time of the year we're in, these teachers will provide an initial assessment to see where our students are so that they can get our students where they need to be. They'll follow our scope and sequence and make sure that they're aligned so our students are prepared for end of the year assessments, end of course exams, as well as the in-district assessments. Okay, and how is proximity learning going to support us? We would have a designated liaison that would work with the high school and with the district. They would be readily available for us to contact with any questions, concerns that we have related to proximity learning, and they'll also provide technical support during our implementation and throughout. Now, we provide the technology and the resources here, but they'd be readily available to assist us if we need help. Okay, proven success. We've looked across the state to see who close to us is using proximity learning to meet their needs as far as vacancies are concerned. These are some of the districts that are close to us that are using proximity learning. And what I found very interesting is that they have a 93% pass rate for the courses that they are able to provide. It's also NCAA approved and TEA approved. I'll add that. Okay, and this is actually one of the proximity learning teachers, a picture of her, and so we want to talk to you about what is this going to look like day to day. So this isn't something we've done before, so what does this look like? The proximity learning teacher, this is what they will be tasked with doing, creating engaging lessons for our students, just as our teachers are here on a day-to-day basis. They'll be providing assignments, giving students feedback, grading student work, being available to our parents. in their meetings and conferences. And what is it going to look like for our student, which is most important? Our students will have individual access to laptops, and so in collaboration with Mr. Nix and with Ms. Simmons and the technology department, we've identified which computers would be utilized for this. Currently, we have computers on wheels at the high school. We wanted to make sure that computers would still be readily available for everybody else at the high school if we needed to have some of these COWs, as we call them, computers on wheels, for proximity learning. So they'll each have a webcam and earbuds where the students are each individually in the instructional setting with the teacher. They will be participating in those class activities assignments, and one of the things that's even better is that they'll have 24-hour access to go back to that lesson if they needed to, or to go to their assignments. They'll have access to that 24 hours a day, as long as they have web access. All right, the facilitator. And so one of the questions you may be wondering is, okay, so the teacher is online and they are live and they're interacting, but who's in the room with the student? That would be a facilitator. That would be someone that we hire to come in, and they are in that classroom to monitor, to make sure students that are on task, that they're engaged, that they're tuned into what's going on. They will also be responsible for inputting grades when we receive them from the proximity learning teacher. So they'll be on our grading schedule, but they don't have access to our system. We use Skyward. They won't get into our system. They keep them externally, provide that information to us, and then our facilitator is responsible for entering that information in the system. And then the facilitator will also be in communication on a regular basis with the campus administration to make sure that they are constantly aware. Just like with any other class, the administration is a big part of this implementation. So what will it look like for the administrator? They need to be monitoring student performance in this new setting, making sure that our students have what they need to be successful in this digital environment, and making sure that they're in constant communication with parents, as well as that proximity learning liaison. All right. I would also like to add that the way we would be funding this, the positions that are currently vacant that we have, the same funds that we have budgeted to fill the position with a teacher, those same funds are the funds that we would roll over to provide the facilitators as well as the proximity, the learning platform. So it wouldn't be new money that we'd be asking for. So I've talked to you about what it would look like, but I want to give you an opportunity to see. And so we have an example on video to see what it potentially would look like.
So if we were to represent this in numbers, you know, you see X represents our variable or unknown, we could have something like 3x plus 2 equal 11, right? So we could see that in this case, in this form, our A would be 3, or B would be represented by 2, and our C would be represented by 11, okay? So that's the standard form of our linear equations when we include one variable. And there's another example. We have our 2x plus 3 equals 11. And this one is not in the standard form, but we have a property that you guys should be familiar with that we could use to simplify the expression on the left. 2, and then what we have in parentheses is x minus 1. So we could use the distributive property to simplify this, and you guys should be familiar with the distributive property. So how would we simplify this expression on the left using the distributive property? See a few people typing.
Wouldn't you'd multiply, correct? So you'd multiply 2 by x and then 2 by -1?
Thank you, Emily. That is correct. So with the distributive property, Parker said it as well in the chat.
So just to give you an idea of what this would potentially look like, I also want to draw your attention to both sides of the screen. So the teacher is able to see the students. The students are able to see the teacher, and then on the left side, students are able to answer by typing in responses to the teacher, and then the teacher is also able to give them access or call on them to respond in the classroom as well. And the facilitator would be walking around the classroom and monitoring this interaction as well. So at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes, Ms. Vega.
Will this online be in various school districts? I mean, could there be 100 or 1,000 if the same kids at the same time doing that?
I'm sorry.
Doing that? I mean, how can that teacher answer all those questions, and how does that all? I mean, I can see it one classroom, but will all these districts be tuned in online?
So this teacher would be here for Duncanville, so they may be teaching somewhere else, because we're limited to the number of students we're able to put in a section of proximity learning, and so that number is 30. And so there, it won't be like 1 million kids that they're answering questions for. Now, that same teacher may be on another time, teaching in another district, absolutely. Yes, Ms. McNeil.
The classes that we vote on this, that we are proposing to do, are the classes right now that don't have a classroom teacher, right now.
They are some of those classes. The content areas that we're currently looking at are chemistry, geometry, and English 3. We're looking at those. Does proximity learning have the capability of providing more? Absolutely. But we want to start small to make sure that we're successful in the implementation if you approve, and then we can always layer on.
Here's my concern. That right there, geometry. We're looking at sophomores. I mean, and so I'm concerned a little bit about, right now, just on the computer, and you've got a left side, and learning all of that, and still getting the content and stuff, but watch it, and I guess my question is, so, I know that when you have credit recovery, if I'm not mistaken, that program is kind of a self-paced where you take tests, and if you don't master it, you can go back, and you don't keep going, you stay back until you master that, and then you go on to the next skill. This isn't that, it's like what people take in college, kind of, and stuff, and so what happens if you have kids, and I know there's got to be something in place that need to be retaught, and do you just keep on going, or do you go back with those kids? Because there are a lot of kids in geometry, you know, that struggle with that, like me.
Absolutely. And so that's one of the things that we considered in looking at proximity learning. The other learning mode that you talked about, that difference is there's not a live teacher there. And so the student is needing to go back and keep working on that content until they master it. In this situation, the same teacher who's providing the instruction, they'll also be grading the student's work and giving feedback. And so they'll still have the capability of being able to spiral in or to go back and reteach and bring students to where they need to be.
And so once we start this, these kids will be with proximity learning for the rest of this year.
For this year, yes, because we still won't stop our efforts of recruiting. For example, as even in our planning, we found a teacher, and so I was able to contact them and say, this is what we're currently looking at now, because we're never going to stop our efforts. Nothing replaces that highly qualified teacher in the classroom.
So if you found a highly qualified teacher that you wanted to hire, you could hire them and place them as maybe a facilitator, or not? I mean, is that how that?
The facilitators are not on a teacher. They are on a certified teacher that's in the classroom with the students. So once we have proximity learning, the courses that we selected for, we'd have that for the duration of the semester or the duration of the year. But in any other course, we continue our efforts. Yes, ma'am.
What are the qualifications? What are we gonna have? What are we looking for in a facilitator?
Absolutely.
We don't want just a warm body, do we?
No, sir. We've actually started formatting a potential job description for the facilitator. One of the things we found is there are individuals who are in our subpool even who are certified teachers, but they're not certified in the areas in which we need. And so on that job description, we've preferred several things, and one of those things is a certification experience with working with students, It's a pretty beefed up description because no, we don't want anyone, and we want someone committed. We don't want to have a turnover of facilitators. They will receive training. Proximity Learning will come in and train them as well. So we want to make sure that those students have consistency throughout the year.
Okay, it says, I'm looking on it, it says 135 minutes of live instruction weekly. Tell me, what does it look like? I mean,
Well, for us, it would look different.
I know because we're on a block schedule. Is that teacher going to be online the whole class period or just part of the class period or?
The entire class period. So the same way the teacher next door is in their room interacting with the students the entire time, this teacher will be there interacting with students. So it may be some time where students are working and doing something, and the teacher then is, giving feedback to students, answering questions. The difference is they're not in the room walking around with them.
But they would be there, they're not going to be there the first 20 minutes
And then leave. No, sir.
turn off the electricity.
No, they won't turn the power off on them. Yes, ma'am.
And how do labs look in chemistry, and how does research, how do research papers in English 3, how does that look, and how does the person, the teacher and the facilitator, and how does that work?
I'll let Mr. Zach Harris, who's here, tell you more about that.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for giving me this time. Labs are a great example of one way that our teacher and the facilitator work hand in hand. So our teacher will do the instruction on how to perform the labs, and then by working with the facilitator makes sure that the labs are completed properly in the classroom. That's one way you're doing it. Or some districts have actually received instruction from our teacher, and then they'll actually go to do a switch to a different class to actually perform the lab with a different teacher. So your own teacher is there to view the actual lab versus the sub or whoever the liaison is in the classroom. So there's a couple of different ways that we can work with that, and we'll do that during implementation time.
Same thing for research papers.
And
English
research
3.
papers as well. And to go back to your question earlier about the traditional online learning where students that are self-directed can go through, everything that we have that's live is also asynchronous or recorded. So those students do have access 24 hours a day to go in and review and, I didn't understand this, go back and study and research on their own in the asynchronous piece while having a live teacher as well.
I guess I just worry a little bit about if like our kids in the Collegiate Academy, sure, I mean, but it's those kids
Certainly.
that have lacked certain.
And one of we
I
have
worry
very
about
high
that.
success because we're geared for a classroom environment, a traditional classroom. Online learning does not have traditionally the same level of success we do because you really need to have that self-directed, self-motivated student to go in and log in and do it. This, our teachers are very accustomed to a real classroom where not every student, unfortunately, is that self-directed. So they pay very close attention to the engagement level of the students to make sure, and they're constantly doing checks for understanding to make sure the class is moving at the same pace. Because we do follow your scope and sequence. So with the geometry, if you do have 2 other courses of geometry by a traditional classroom teacher, everybody's moving at the same pace. I hope that helps answer your question. Yes, sir.
You made the comment that everything was recorded.
Yes, sir.
The student could go back and review that lesson.
Mhm.
Can they do that at home? Or they
Yes,
have
sir.
to be at school?
Wherever they have access to internet and device. While I'm hearing any other questions from anybody?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I've got one from Ms. Simmons.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
How's this going to work for you?
I'm really
I mean,
excited.
we've got the same number of assistant principals. We get seem like, I know it says online monitoring. Had a really nice picture of you up here on my board. You look really nice, but I mean, you've got 4,000 kids. How is this going to work with our administration?
Yes, sir. I'm excited about the opportunity to offer our students this blended learning environment because these students are born in the technology age. This is what they know and understand. The telephone usage and device usage on campus. We're a BYOD campus, but it's a constant battle of making sure that they are pulling away from devices when we need them to. And so what we talk about with our teachers is if you can't beat them, join them. So we need to find ways to integrate technology for instructional purposes, and this puts them in their element. Regarding the monitoring piece, the way we've structured the administrative team this year, each administrator is responsible for a particular area, a particular content area. And then working with Mr. Nix, we've also been able to establish some new monitoring processes on campus to ensure that we're monitoring instruction and responding in a timely manner. And so we have processes in place for walkthroughs and feedback on a consistent basis. I don't foresee it being an additional task because we already have systems in place to support these students.
I just worry about, 'cause I know that's an awful big place.
Yes, sir.
I just worry about just keep throwing things on you and throwing things on you. So,
Yes, sir. I think that it is important for us to leverage the opportunity to put a certified teacher in those classrooms and understand how we could be successful with this to ensure that although it is a large place and there are many things going on and we want to ensure success, it's also important that we are focusing on the main thing, which is the student learning and ensuring that we have certified professionals working with them.
be sure and screen now if it gets too much.
Absolutely. Ms. Brown and Mr. Nix have been in constant communication with us. Yes, sir.
Maybe a question, Mr. Nix, I don't know, but this is something that, you know, we kicked around a lot, and this is kind of a introductory to it about being able to have online learning for kids off campus. Is this something that we, if this is successful, that we could take this then and model it into a situation where kids could actually be at home and be enrolled, like, you know, some of these online K through 12 schools you see advertised on TV? Could we develop something like that from this? I mean, if this is successful for us, could we take that and then move it into that?
I think it's definitely an option, definitely something that we can take a look at. Our focus right now is making sure that we're starting off small to monitor the success, to see exactly, you know, how well we're doing. But to your point, is this something that we could potentially look at expanding in the future? That's definitely an option that we could definitely bring back to the board.
Well, I only asked the question because, you know, everything today is about choices.
Absolutely.
And this might be a great choice to offer to get kids back into a public school from
Absolutely.
some charter or some private school that the parents really can't afford for them to go to, if they could be homeschooled, but through Duncanville ISD,
Yes, sir.
if you will, and we get credit for that.
Absolutely.
Well, I encourage us to move towards that.
I think I have more of a budget question. Will the salaries of the teachers we don't have, will that be enough to cover the cost of proximity? I want to know
Yes.
it's going to affect the budget.
Yes, I've been working with Ms. Arrington as well. And so we've looked at the salaries that we previously budgeted for this. And not only did we have to have enough to cover proximity learning, but the facilitators as well. And so that all falls within those vacancies.
Do we have a contract that we're going to sign? I mean, I'd like to
Yes, there would be an agreement. It's, there should be the quote in your, I'm sorry, I don't know the page, but it's approximately $187,000 total for all costs. About approximately $187,000.
those salaries covered. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Other questions? Okay, I appreciate your
All
time.
right, thank you, Ms. Brown, we appreciate that. Just as we close this out, just a reminder of what we're doing and why we're doing this and what the alternative would be if we did not do something. And so, obviously, we have substitute teachers that are in those classes now who are doing a good job for us, are doing the best that they can do. However, they're not certified teachers and they're not masters of the content in key critical subject areas. And so we wanted to look to something that was innovative, something that could provide the quality of instruction that we all want for our students. And so this is one way that we're able to accomplish that. The other thing I think that is important to know and think through is that we wanted to start small before we expand it. Because anytime you start something new, there's going to be a little turbulence and things that you have to work through along the way. And we didn't want to impact large numbers of kids. And so we want to work through those small things, and we'll get things stabilized as we go. And I think our students will be way more receptive to the technology than what the adults are. I mean, they're going to catch on fire, and they'll be moving, and it won't be a challenge for them. So the challenge will be more for the adults to kind of keep up with the students as we begin the process. So I want to applaud the staff for doing the good work from a budget standpoint. The other thing I do want to emphasize, I've talked to you several times about position control. And there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to manage the positions. And because we've done a really good job to make sure that we are hiring, we have a process to where when we hire, there's a vacancy, or we don't hire if we don't need it. We're in a situation now where we have the positions because we've managed that very well, and we're not having to ask for additional dollars to support an innovative program like that because we have those existing positions. So all of those factors are at play that even put us in a position to take a step out to try to meet the needs of our kids. So I wanted to really highlight that for you as you think this through leading into Monday. Won't be asking, of course, for your support.
Dr. Smith, I'd like to say something to that. As a parent with a student that was in a classroom that had a substitute, or I'm excited about the program. And when I look at the numbers, the quote that was given, how many vacancies do we have?
At the high school currently,
There are approximately 10. This would take care of. Okay, that would only take care of 4. I just feel like it's a great thing for the students to, I mean, parents, we might not understand the concept, but I think the students, like you said, they'll catch on, and I think that it's gonna take off like wildfire. Because I was very concerned as a parent that my child was in a classroom at the beginning of the year without a teacher. And I think she would love this. So I just wanted to
thank
put
you.
my 2 cents.
More question. When we vote on this next Monday, approve it, what's the timeline? To get it up and running?
Yes, sir. The timeline is 2 to 4 weeks. If the teacher is available, it'll take about approximately 2 weeks for it to be up and running. We've been working closely with Mr. Harris to, he's been looking for teachers in the event that it is approved, and so some of those people are just waiting to see if it's approved, and then we will start with the implementation. The other piece you all mentioned about parents, if approved, there will be a parent night where the proximity learning teachers will actually be there via the web, where parents can come out and interact with their child's teacher and to see what the content will look like. So we're excited about that as well.
I have just one last question.
Yes, sir.
Is there going to be some coordination as to where they are now, as to where they'll start? Or is that certified teachers going to go back and review to make sure they are up to speed? And since they haven't been taught by a certified teacher with knowledge of maybe that particular course, my guess is they might be a little bit behind. I don't know that, but my guess would be. So is there going to be some coordination so that teacher knows where they might be and then try to work back if need be?
Yes, the high school first, they've been working. They have put a plan in place to meet the needs of the students as best they can, given this current circumstance. But there is an assessment that the teacher gives at the very beginning related to that course and what's required to see where students are before they start.
Cool. All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next item that we'll have for you on Monday is the extension of the Texas General Land Office interlocal agreement. The lead presenter is Ms. Andre Fields. She has some representatives here. She's going to give you the background information that's important for you to know leading into Monday. Obviously outline our recommendations and then walk through the presentation for you so you have a good idea of what you'll be asked to be voting on Monday. I'll turn it over to Ms. Fields.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Again, good evening. As per our policy, CH Legal, of course, the board delegates to the superintendent or designate the authority to make budgeted purchases for goods and services. However, any single budgeted purchase of goods and services over $50,000 or more, regardless of the goods or services, whether they're competitively purchased, shall require your approval. And so tonight, we want to present to you some information regarding our extension of the interlocal agreement with Texas General Land Office State Power Program and Duncanville ISD. Tonight we are going to give you an overview of what our current status is with our energy provider. And just to frame our conversation tonight, the original agreement, which I believe you have before you, was signed February the 1st, 2014, and it was for a 24-month period. It would have expired January 31st of 2016. However, before the expiration in January of 16, the district approved an extension for 36 months, and that was done in December of 2014. And that agreement will expire, the current agreement will expire January 31st of 2019. So we're still under our current agreement. The agreement designates Cavallo Energy Texas, LLC, as our energy provider, and Cavallo has been our provider since the original agreement in 2014. Since I came to the district, I've had an opportunity to work with the representatives of Cavallo, answer questions as we brought on new folks in the operations department. They've come to our district and explained to us about our energy cost. And so we've been in great partnership with them since my arrival in the district. So at this time, to further give you more information, I want to introduce to you Ms. Teresa Kelly, who is the Vice President of Cavallo Energy Texas, to share with you some good news about electricity cost and some important and pertinent information for your consideration regarding our current contract and possible approval of the extension of our agreement. So, Ms. Kelly?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. The General Land Office, the Texas General Land Office, they're an agency here in the state of Texas, and Cavallo is the General Land Office provider. So I'm here speaking on behalf of the GLO today. The GLO serves about 180 other school districts in the state. GLO can only serve electricity and natural gas to fellow government entities. So, for example, school districts, cities, counties, state agencies. GLO cannot serve, for example, the AT&T store across the street or the CVS. So it's strictly a government-to-government interlocal agreement. The good news that Andre mentioned is that the opportunity exists now for about a 25% savings off of your future contract prices if you decided to extend. GLO requires us as Cavallo to keep you informed about the market, whether that's significant increases or like today, which is much more pleasurable, to talk about lower prices in the future. As Andre mentioned, your contract doesn't end until early 2019. So I'll talk to you about why I'm here now as we get into this presentation. The headline, though, is that relatively low natural gas prices drive, they're the major fuel for generation plants here in Texas. So relatively low natural gas prices, the increase of renewable energy development. I'm sure you've driven in West Texas, out in Central Texas, you've seen the wind farms. Solar is starting to come into its own. So this increase of generation adds to the supply, combined with the low natural gas prices for the gas plants. And very importantly, the EPA has been easing basically the Supreme Court knocked down some of the EPA's requirements that they were trying to hold on Texas that would close some of the coal plants. So some of the coal plants are staying online. We have adequate supply. We have the low natural gas prices combined with the renewables, so that has driven prices down of recent. The current wholesale electricity values for 2019 and forward are in the 97th percentile, meaning 3% of the time, since we've been tracking this since 2008, have prices been lower than they are now for the 2019 plus timeframe. That 25% equates to about $300,000 off of your current price that you're paying through January of 2019. If you turn the page, oh, I'm supposed to be turning the page here. Does this control what you see? Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. So that was the front page, the executive summary. The next page has three bars on this graph. The first bar to the left is your prior contract, the one that Andre first mentioned. And that was signed in January of 2014. And then your middle bar is where you took a rate reduction for your next period that you're currently in. That was a 7% reduction in price. Now what we're talking about today, if the board decided to extend further, is this diagonally sliced bar on the far right, which is the 25% reduction that I mentioned, or approximately $300,000 in savings. Now, you note at the bottom of that right-hand bar, there's a time frame there that shows 2019 through 2024. But as we get further into this presentation, not only does the board have a decision to make about whether to extend or not, you already know you're going to use the electricity. You know you will use it in these future years. You just don't know yet at what price. So in addition to making a decision on whether to extend or not, you will also make a decision on how much to extend. 2019, 2020, 2022, 2024. So we have a varied time frame here. And 300,000 is I think that was like for a 24-month extension. So we'll get into that further. Let's see here. So the first part of this, the first few bullets on this slide have already been mentioned by Andre, so I'll go through them fairly quickly. The interlocal agreement with the rate ends at the end of January of 19. That's your current agreement. You use about 20,000 megawatt hours a year, 20,000 units a year. You have about 85 meter locations. I applaud the district on the implementation of your bond program and the construction program that was discussed earlier, and the growth of the district with the programs that you've implemented to bring more students in. And we have worked with the staff to bring those new facilities online, to add load to the contract. That's an important provision that's on this third bullet here, that we have a liberal add-delete provision. If you have a bond program, for example, in that extended time frame, 2019 and beyond, where you already know that you're going to add certain schools, then we would like to include those in the contract then as what we call placeholders. But in the event you don't, we also have an add-delete provision in the agreement. But your current rate is almost 5.3 cents, or what we would say is $52.97 a megawatt hour. And right now, the way that sits is once you add the encore charges, the wires and poles delivery charges, then you're up around 9.3 cents, or $93 a megawatt hour. So currently, you're about 57% energy from the GLO and about 43% regulated encore charges. With this extension, that's going to flip. So we'll talk about that in a minute, because I think there's some work to do on the encore charges that we could work with you on. So here we go. On the bottom table, the 12-month price right now is $37.20. That compares to the $52.97 that you're on now. If you go all the way down, like say to the 60-month, just go straight down that column, that price is $39. So the market right now is what we would call contango. The further you go out, the more expensive it is. But it's still relatively low compared to historical prices. What we like to do is put this into context with just straight facts, just statistical analysis, and kind of remove the emotion of where you think the market is going. Because the district knows you're going to use the electricity. It's just at what price. The next column to the right, called Comparative Rate. If you bounce back up to the second large bullet, it talks about, unlike other retailers, GLO does not pass through these certain charges, so PUC and GRT expenses. Other retailers pass that through on the invoice. They don't include it in their price. And so the $37.20 for the 12-month compares, for example, to a $35.42 with another provider. Once they added the additional pass-throughs, then you would be back to the $37.20 price. Does that make sense, or does anyone have questions about that? So that's where we have the savings, the $300,000 that we put on the round number. But you can see on down in the 60 and 72 month, that's more like $269,000 or $274,000. Over the term, then the far right column is the cumulative number. So over the term, that 60 month, $273,000 would be $1.3 million savings versus your current price on a 60-month term. These are there's a whole lot of factors that determine whether the price of electricity is going up or going down. I tried to just give you a few examples. The easiest one to think about is renewable energy development. If incentives on renewable energy development, because they typically still don't really stand on their own in competition with pricing from a natural gas plant. So if the incentives for renewable development were pending expiry, then that would put upward pressure on prices. They could go back up. The top one there, the age of a plant or regulatory provisions of a plant like coal, like the EPA. Currently we have an administration in Washington that's more inclined to not have regulatory-driven events to retire coal plants. But at the same time, they also don't really promote renewables. So there's just some factors on what could increase and decrease. You see on the left, we talked earlier about the encore charges making up slightly less than your GLO component. Let's see here. On this page, the current wholesale block for calendar year 2019, for example, is 3132 a megawatt hour. The minimum that has ever traded since 2008, since database has been building and tracking, the minimum price of that wholesale block is $30.53. So we're still above the lowest point that we've ever seen in the market. The maximum price that wholesale block has been is $81.41. If you look down to the row called current versus minimum, so 79 cents higher than the lowest point we've ever been, $50 lower than the maximum price we've ever been. So then those last two rows are the district's exposure based on your consumption level on an annual basis. How much more you could save if we waited until the very lowest point in the market, or maybe even further, is in the thousands, $15,000 to $20,000. What you could potentially pay if the factors cause the market to go back up is they're in the $1 million range. On this page, we're talking again about the Encore versus GLO charges. So currently, for example, let's say, for example, that the district authorized the superintendent to sign at a price not to exceed $39.50 a megawatt hour. Then at that rate, then you would flip from the 57% energy, 43% wires charges to 49% energy, 51% Encore charges. at that point, I would really suggest that we start working with the team to focus more on decreasing the encore charges. How do you do that? They're regulated, they're PUC approved, they're approved in Austin, they're set for everybody. The way to do that is to go through and look at your larger meters that have ratchets. So the way Encore charges, it's a buildup of charges that if you, let's say, for example, you use 1,000 units, 1,000 kW at a particular meter in August, and then you don't use anything that high in demand for the next 12 months, you're still going to pay 80% of that 1,000 for the rest of the year for your demand. Because they have put in the facilities to serve the load that they don't know when you're going to come in and start, turning something on or off. So that's how their rates are set. So the way we reduce your encore charges is to look at those ratchets and figure out how we can usually shed between 3:30 and 5 p.m. If you can do that. We don't know that. I don't know that yet. So that's what we would take a look at when that gets to that position. That's my presentation. I have some support materials. It's mostly about who GLO is, who we serve, how long we've been in business, that sort of thing that I can leave with you, or if you have questions. Oh, I guess I have to show you though. On the left is who GLO is, why we're in the market, why choose us. On the right is more about the timing that we've covered fairly extensively today. We do offer, I don't think I mentioned, the GLO funds public schools in Texas. So they do that by contributing to the funds that TEA distributes, so through the Permanent School Fund. And they also do that by guaranteeing bond programs with the AAA rating through the Permanent School Fund. So GLO manages the Permanent School Fund. We offer all kinds of electricity products, fixed price, gas index products, block and index products, demand response. We offer renewable energy.
Let me just jump in here.
I'm sorry?
Let me just jump in here.
Okay.
Main takeaways is that, one, if we take advantage of this opportunity now, by doing so, it's very favorable for us as a district. And so we want to make sure that we capitalize on this opportunity, and I think that's really the main point that you're trying to drive home. So I wanted to summarize that for you. Thank you. We appreciate you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions you have for them? We can vote Monday. Thank you. All right, thank you, ma'am. The next item that we'll be asking the board to approve on Monday is item D. That's to accelerate learning STEM scopes. That's also Ms. Fields, and so I ask her to come up.
And get my exercise this evening. Again, board, I've already shared with you, of course, about our policy, CH Local. You have before you, we're asking you next week for your approval of accelerated learning STEM scopes. And of course, you have the summary before you, but the STEM scopes will provide students with hands-on investigations, inquiry-based learning opportunities, and embedded professional development for teachers. Will serve students in grades K through 8 who will use STEM scopes curriculum. They include books, kits, and training. And of course, the amount of the approval we're asking for is $59,471.91. The funding source for this will be federal funds, and these will be purchased through Accelerate Learning using the Choice Partners Purchasing Co-op. Of course, if you have questions specifically about the program, the purchase, the instructional piece, Dr. Hernandez and team are here to answer any questions regarding that. So that's my presentation in regard to the STEM scopes. This is for science.
Any questions, board members?
Dr. Hernandez?
Good evening. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
So what exactly is that?
STEM Scope is an online digital resource for pre-K 8 science courses. It consists of hands-on science, inquiry-based. It follows the 5E model. It is cross-curricular activities where there are embedded lessons for mathematics, reading, and we're teaching, and there's professional development embedded in the system that allow teachers all of the resources they need to teach science. We had it last year, and we saw an increase in student achievement in science in all of our tested grades as well as our elementary grades. More questions?
Any other questions on that
You
item?
mentioned that it follows a 5E model. What is a 5E model?
The 5E model is what we use for the district. There is explore and activities, explaining activities, an opportunity for evaluation. So it follows all of the things that we are outlining in the district. So there are several opportunities for the students to follow all of what we're saying. So the explore activity is the hands-on piece. The explaining activity, the teacher is explaining the lesson in detail of what the students are expected to do. The evaluate, they have an assessment piece where the students are able to use assessments other than what they're giving from the district. So all of those, there is an intervention piece as well as an acceleration piece for our advanced students. So the intervention piece is to help those students that are struggling in science, and the acceleration piece is to help those students that get it and we want to move them on to the next level.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll transition on to the next item that will be presented to you on Monday. It's iStation. We are working, Ms. Fields, you may as well stay up. Should have stayed up there.
I need some exercise. It's all right. Again, tonight and for next week, we'll be asking your approval again for a purchase of over $50,000. And in this instance, it is approval of iStation. iStation will be used for students for instruction in reading and math. And iStation is a screener where teachers and parents can see the students' levels in reading and math to help them improve. Having a screener is a requirement by the state of Texas. iStation will also be used for RTI, which is for means response to intervention. And grades K through 8 will use iStation. And these items will be purchased through iStation in an amount of $121,736 and some change using the PACE Purchasing Co-op. And these funds will be funded through IMA, our Instructional Materials Allotment. And again, our instructional team members are here if you have questions regarding the actual use of iStation as a screener for our students. Any questions?
I would like to know more about it.
All right.
Good evening, President McNeely. Ideally, we use this as our screener for our lower grades, pre-K through 8th grade. When the students start every year, we will use it to determine where their weaknesses are in terms of their reading program. And so we do lots of training with our reading teachers in the district as well as our math and reading center teachers, which you'll hear more about when I talk about Goal 1 here in a little bit.
So just for clarification, the screener allows you to determine the strengths and weaknesses of students, where they are, so that then you can modify instruction appropriately. And that's a key part of our instructional program as well, so.
Any other questions?
I also, just as a reminder, wanted to point out on that previous item, federal funding is is the source. So we didn't touch on that, but I wanted to mention that. And then IMA, you want to just explain?
So every biennium, we get an instructional materials allotment from the state, and the money that we're using to pay for iStation this year is out of that biennium allotment. That should be in your board exhibit there. That's how we're going to be paying for it.
Any other questions on iStation? Everybody's good?
Thank you.
Okay, good, thank you. Next item is item F. That's the BE local policy regarding the board meeting dates, and Ms. Melissa Cates will provide that information.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, and Dr. Smith. Before you, we have this BE local policy, and with the change and the addition of the board workshop and moving our regular board meeting to the third Monday of the month, we just needed to align our local policy with that, with the change of these board meetings. And we also have the request for BF local, which allows us to pass this policy in one reading. So we're asking for you to allow the passage of this at next week's meeting. Any questions?
Any questions? All right, thank you. Okay, the next item will be the information items that will be presented to you on Monday. I've shared with you our strategic plan, of course, and we're going to be reporting that information out as part of our goals, as part of the expectation you have of me to be able to continue to update you on where we are with our strategic plan. And so each month we'll be reviewing a particular goal, and Monday we'll be starting off with goal number 1. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Hernandez to share what that goal is and all the information associated with where we are.
All right, so it's me again. So again, this evening we're going to be presenting to you an update on strategic goal number 1. Just as a quick reminder, goal 1 is focus on student success. Under that term, we have 2 objectives that we will be looking at in terms of how we meet that expectation. Our first objective is students will meet or exceed grade level expectations on local, state, and national assessments. That's our first objective. And of course, our second objective is students will be prepared for a post-secondary college or career. What you'll find through this presentation is that you'll find examples of how we're meeting this strategic goal throughout the district with work that we've done last year in the 16-17 school year, as well as work that we are performing now at this point in the school year. As a reminder, in August, we did come to you and present to you the outcomes of our assessment and accountability data from last year. We'll remind you that our district did get the highest rating, which was Met Standard. And as you'll see there, you have the 4 indexes. Index 1, which is student achievement, Index 2, and 3 and 4 as follows. Of course, on Index 4, our district made tremendous jumps in terms of college and career readiness. And you'll hear more about that when we get to that slide. But our district did exceed the index target for Index 4, as well as all 16 of our campuses met standard for the 16-17 school year. And then, of course, our Pay Center received a Met Alternative Standard rating for the 16-17 school year. So in terms of district data, that's just a quick recap from the presentation that we brought to you in the summer. If you'll recall from our September board meeting, we also brought you information on our campuses and the distinctions that they received. Of course, this year we had 9 campuses. That's 9 out of 18. That's half of our district that received a distinction. When you consider that in order to receive a distinction, you have to be in the top 25% of your comparable schools, and some of these schools are really high-performing schools. This is a great accomplishment for our school district. You could see them broken down there. You know, our middle schools there, Byrd and Kennemer, received 3 and 1 respectively. Our intermediate schools received 2 at Brandenburg, 3 at Hardin, and then, of course, our elementary schools that are listed there that each received 1 distinction apiece. And so this is a lot of the information that we brought to you guys in September at our board meeting. Advanced academics. So if you recall last year, we also brought exhibits for you asking that you consider investing in our district's advanced academics program. To date, you did approve in prior board meetings the the hiring of 3 gate specialists for our district. Those 3 gate specialists, and these are examples of what they've been doing, have been working very closely with our teachers out at all levels of our school district, not just our traditional secondary programs, but specifically down in our elementary and our intermediate programs, making sure that our kids and our teachers are receiving support in performing advanced academic lessons in the classroom. I know you hear probably a lot about AP and pre-AP at the secondary level, but we're also doing think tank extended lessons for our elementary schools and our intermediate schools. So obviously that's something that you guys approved over the summer, but it is definitely work that we are looking to expand for the current school year. College and career readiness. So I'll remind you of goal number 4. As I said, our district and index 4 did increase dramatically in terms of the college and career choices that we're providing for our students in the district. Some of the information that I wanted to remind you of are the number of CTE courses. If you look at the last 4 years, we're tracking major growth in the number of CTE courses that we're offering, as well as CTE seats used in dual credit. If you noticed in 2013-14, we were at 155 seats, well, we're up to 368, and I believe actually that number's going up for the 17-18 school year. Duncanville ISD offers 28 industry-recognized certifications as part of our platform and the services that we provide. We have 11 clusters that provide paid and non-paid internships. We have 24 academic dual credit courses, and of course, you see the rest of the numbers listed there. And we have 2 externship partners, CVS and Walgreens, I believe, as well as many MOUs with the universities that are listed there, and of course, our DCCD partners throughout the city, but specifically our campuses here at Mountain View and Cedar Valley. Early childhood. If you remember from our conversations early in the spring and throughout the summer, one of the important things that we've done as a school district is that we've brought a major focus to our early childhood department and the work that we're doing with our little ones. To date, we have 336 students that are enrolled in our pre-K enrollment classrooms. We have 170 full-day students, 88 in gen ed, 66 in bilingual, and 16 in tuition-based. We have 166 students in half-day programs, 88 in gen ed, and 88 in bilingual. And then in terms of the items that you have approved, you approved an early childhood specialist who's providing support in our classrooms, specifically on pre-K guidelines and what those guidelines mean to our teachers in the classroom. Our Frog Street curriculum that we're using that you also approved for our district. Circle progress measure, which is an assessment that we use 3 times throughout the school year to determine if our students are growing cognitively, emotionally, and socially. And then, of course, classroom environment components in terms of setting up classrooms and making sure that all the early childhood centers are developed in each one of our classrooms. So our teacher specialist, Dana Harper, is the person that provides that type of support for us in our classrooms. Dual language or language acquisition. If you recall, we also brought a special report to you in the summer in terms of our dual language program. Of course, our students in the program are learning their native language while also developing their English language. They're learning at grade level content specific to their level. They're learning and transferring knowledge and skills, the skills that all of our students are learning at their appropriate grade level. And of course, we're working on developing their long-term achievement. If you recall from our conversation in the summer, we have specific reading and writing goals for our students. I'll let you read those. But specifically, we're seeing our students grow in terms of what they're able to write in their native language and how they're progressing into their second language. And I can tell you a lot of our little ones are already writing like 2 or 3 pages worth in 2 languages. So I think that's extremely powerful in terms of the work that we're doing with our students and with our teachers throughout the district. That's the other part, is that we're working with our folks, our teachers specifically, on what they're providing for our students in the classroom. So professional development. If you recall from our prior conversations, we made an investment as a school district in our teacher specialists. This year, one of the things that we brought to our principals in our schools is the professional learning community model. And so that is definitely something that we have prepared our principals to take out into the schools, as well as teacher specialists to be able to support the work that's going out in the classrooms, and specifically content level support. You know, a big piece of what we do is developing our teachers in terms of the strategies they use in the classroom, but it's also equally important that they understand their content. We've worked, that's one of the things we're working on very highly this year, in terms of our action plan for this school year and years to come is to really develop the skills of our teachers in their content areas. So that's what we're doing in terms of professional development. Oops. And then if we go back to our state and federal programs, if you recall from our summer presentation to you as well, the way we're supporting Goal 1, focus on student success with our state and federal programs, you've heard me talk about the early childhood specialist. That person is funded out of this, this money. We also provide pre-K supplemental material for our classrooms, as well as technology and software. We're also providing instructional support and Lead Forward, which helps our principals map their data for their school. We are using classroom instruction that works. You heard me talk about professional learning communities. And then, of course, we also pay for our reading and math center teachers, which, as you heard me discuss earlier about our RTI model and iStation, these are the individuals that actually take that data and take that work and bring it to our students through the support and interventions that they get on campus. We also recommended to you this summer math, literacy, and science facilitators for our district. Those individuals are on board and are out working in our schools every day, supporting teachers in the classroom. And then, of course, we also use it for boot camps in areas of PSAT, SAT, and ACT. And then you see STEM scopes, which we just brought to you a few moments ago. And that brings me to the conclusion of Goal 1, focus on student success. I'll be open for any questions that you might have.
I had a question. I just want to find the slide so I can ask it properly. It was back on the pre-K enrollment slide.
Mm-hmm.
Back one more, I think. There you go. We have that many in full day, 170, and 166 in half day. Is that maxed out, or do we have room for more kids if we had more kids?
We do still have a little bit of space for kids in our half-day programs, but our full-day programs are full at this point. And of course, we also have our early childhood person here if you have any other questions about that, but we are maxed out on the full day.
On the tuition, where we have 16 kids that are actually paying tuition,
So if we could grow there to about 22 kids, initially we started at 20, and then the actual bodies that showed up were at 16.
what is tuition?
Ms. Turner, can you help me out with that one?
Good evening. Tuition is $475 per month.
Per month. So how does that compare to childcare that a parent might have to pay to a daycare center?
So when we started this conversation last spring, we wanted to end up somewhere in the middle of our competitors here in the district, and I believe that range was between $450 and $550. So we're on the lower end of that spectrum, but we're very competitive with everyone here in our local area.
Well, my question is more than that. You know, it's to our benefit to educate these kids, because down the road we're going to see an improvement in our district, in our grades, and the whole bit, and our standing in the academic world. So my question is, why can't we, or why don't we go out and market this as, you know, you can come to school, your kids can learn, they can have a certified teacher to teach them instead of going to daycare where they just play games, you know. And it seems to me we ought to be able to do that, at least to fill up what space we have, if more people knew about the programs we have. And if I were a parent and I had a little kid, trust me, I'd jump on that. If I was paying $500 a month for them to go and play games, or if I could pay $500 a month for them to come get an education. And I think most parents would respond to that in a positive way to do that. So my question is simply, we need to market what we got and do a better, not a better job, because we're doing a great job of that, but to do it so that more parents know that, so we can do this. It's going to benefit all of us.
Agreed.
Down the road. Because we'll have kids coming to school that are ready to learn. They're there, you know, they know what ABC is, they know what red, white, and blue is. Not saying that they don't get some of that in daycare centers, because they do, but if they got it in an organized, professionally taught program, I think we'd be far better off.
Also, I can speak to that just a little bit. This last year, when it came to the marketing aspect of this, we did commit more time and effort and dollars to the marketing of our pre-K programs, and also included information about the tuition base. So it was a combination of informing our communities that we were, number one, expanding to full-day pre-K, and also to tuition breaks, which is why you see the increase there. But in the coming year, we're definitely already having that discussion. Part of the thing is working with a marketing firm to address how we market our pre-K, getting ahead of that so that we have the plan in place strategically to make sure that we're speaking to those communities, because we do recognize the need to address the early education component in the district and getting students in earlier, obviously going after those who maybe don't qualify but would benefit from tuition base. I personally have a 3-year-old, so I'm at that point and have been doing these exact same things. So I do understand it, and it's definitely an aspect of what we're looking for the upcoming year.
That's great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Those who pay tuition, is that because they don't qualify for free and reduced lunch? I mean, is that what it's based on?
For the most part, yes, ma'am. They either don't meet those requirements, so a lot of times that's why they end up in the tuition-based courses.
I just want to share something. Are there any more questions? I want to tell y'all, everybody here, that I have a good friend that I saw at my local health club one day, and she is a retired teacher from Dallas who retired this past year and had subbed at the beginning of school at both Acton and Hastings. But she ended up at Acton when, I guess, the transition with teachers were moving over there. And I think maybe a teacher from Central had been over there, and she ended up in one of those pre-K classes. And I want you to know, she said, "Renee, I want to tell you that when I walked into that classroom, it was like a well-oiled machine that had been running all year long, and it was like 2 or 3 weeks into the year." And she said, the teacher, they had their stations and the bells rang, and the kids knew by then that it was time to go to another station. And she said, the thing I was most impressed about was every student in there had a journal, and they were already journaling. So I just wanted to share that we're
Thank
doing
you.
good things. And I wanted y'all to know that, and to know that I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions?
Okay. All right. Thank you. We've got one item left that we'll be presenting to you on Monday. That's the transportation report. I'll call up Ms. Fields and Mr. Brian Merchant.
And good evening again. It is my pleasure this time to present Mr. Brian Merchant, one of my awesome team members on the operations team. He's going to present to you our annual transportation report.
Well, good evening, President McNeely and trustees and Dr. Smith. And so as you can see, your transportation department's about 101 employees strong there. You can see kind of the breakdown and the hours that we work on a day-to-day basis there at transportation. Whoops, let me go back. Turn my mic up just a little bit. All right. This is our mileage that we do with our regular routing, and then we kind of track the career tech and the athletic and the field trip mileage, and you can see this year that our mileage did reduce a little bit on regular routes and special needs due to the reduced days that we experienced, but our campus field trip mileage, our athletic field trip mileage, and career technology mileage has all increased. Kind of gets ahead of it there. But our current regular buses that we have 45 regular buses. We use 33 of those on routes. 2 of those are non-usable, and we use 10 for spares and athletics. In our special need buses, we have 26 total. 20 of those are on routes, 4 are non-usable, and 2 of those we use as spares. So you can see we're kind of challenged a little bit in our spares. Today was a tough day on buses. The buses with cameras are 64, and you can see the breakdown there. For our white fleet vehicles, which are the vehicles that we use in the other departments, there's a distinction between the two. Buses are yellow and the other cars are white, so that's why we call them the white fleet. And you can see the distribution of those throughout the other departments. Going back to buses, our average age really of our buses is about 14 years. The industry standard on replacement is about 12 to 15 years. We're currently 31 vehicles that have reached the 13-year mark or beyond that. And our oldest vehicle is a 1997, and our newest vehicle is a 2017. And the reason why that's 2017, we didn't buy any buses, is that the bus industry goes about a year to 2 years ahead. So they're just farther ahead than vehicles. Just for clarification on the non-usable, those vehicles are not able to be driven. They need to be repowered, and I'm going to talk about that here in just a second. The cost of a new school bus is about $114,000, and that's including regular and sped. Those are also including the new requirements that we have with seat belts that has come out. The only way around that is to purchase older vehicles, and the state allows us not to have to do the seat belts. A repower is just a motor and a transmission, and you can see the cost there and the amount of warranty that comes with that is $45,000 total to do one bus. When we do our fuel, we have a TASB contract now. We used to pay up around about $2.85 for diesel, a little bit higher for gasoline, but over the years we've been able to bring that down. It's just about time to start looking at that again. The latest price I got on diesel was $1.76, and so we're waiting to see if it's going to drop a little bit more. We budget about $291,400 for fuel. In diesel, we used 131,000 gallons, and gas, we used 22,000 gallons, about a total of 270,000. And then, of course, there's always diesel in the ground and gas in the ground that carries over each year, so that's why that number's a little bit different there. This is our daily riders. This is morning and afternoon, so you can see that with regular routes, we come in contact with about 3,000 plus students every morning and 3,000 plus students in the afternoon. Our special needs students, about 227, and then our career technology has increased as well. On our PM inspections that we do, we kind of have a process that we follow, and obviously it starts with the drivers on their daily inspections, their morning trips and pre-trips and post-trips, and then the mechanics and the fleet staff out there, they start off with, if they do a B portion of that PM, then they usually go through like a V8 diesel engine's 3,600 miles or 300 hours, and then an inline diesel engine would be 6,000 miles or 500 hours, and the difference in that is the inlines hold more oil, and so it's a little bit different filtration system. When you get into the C portion of a preventative maintenance, you always go back and do a B, but we're usually doing those items that you can see there, and then so on as we do a D, an E, and an F. I want to talk a little bit about our mechanics. My fleet manager was going to be here this evening, but he's in Oklahoma at a conference on video cameras, so we're trying to work through that. But his name is Brad, and he's got just about as many ASE certifications as a man can have. That's Automotive Service Excellence, and he also has a bachelor's, in business administration. And so Don Gadberry is my PM shop foreman. He's just about to complete his ASE certifications, and David's working toward his TASBT, which is the Texas Association of School Bus Technicians. Those certifications are recognized pretty much in any diesel industry, but not obviously as much as the ASE, which is pretty common. And then Jose is working toward his. We're hoping to bring in one more gentleman that we've been interviewing, and he'll be a great asset to our district with the certifications that he has. This is our hazardous routing. These are board-approved routes or boundaries that we have, and there's 49 total of those. And just an example of that for the high school, Rosemont East and West or Hill City is within 2 miles, but there's some hazards that we have declared using our assessment tool we brought to you guys, and y'all were able to approve that. So we do provide bus service to those areas that we deem as hazardous. With our training, we do our professional training, obviously for our new drivers, our new coaches. Special needs training involves CPI training, CPR, first aid. We also try to work with our monitors. We have our in-service training at the beginning of the year, and then obviously our student management training, not only to keep our students safe, but to try to have a pleasant atmosphere since we're the first and last people that they see throughout their day. Obviously with pre-trips and post-trips, even though we do that stuff all the time, we still go back and have reminders of those items because they're very important. And going back to the preventative maintenance slide, then those are very crucial for those moments. Also with our turning, our backing, those items there. Our trainers are Vicki Bryant, Paul Gant, and Johnny Campbell, and obviously myself and others. We spend the day, or we have our training times that we have. And then our student management, working with Ed Marcel, Ms. Fields, through those issues that we come across, and then the laws that we try to follow. With our bus accidents, we can see that they are decreasing, but our long-term goal one day is to have none. And that's our long-term goal. And so sometimes it just seems difficult. And some of y'all remember when we went on the tour, some of the challenges that, we face in some of the streets that we are on. 2 of those 7 that you see there are coaches. The other 5 are with the drivers. One of those drivers is no longer here because of that situation that we had. And then the 5 blue are the not at fault accidents that's beyond our control. And so that's all I've got. So do y'all have any questions?
Any questions? All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Merchant. So that concludes the items that will be presented to you on Monday. I don't anticipate any significant changes between now and Monday. And so what was presented to you today will be ready for your approval on Monday. If you have any questions or clarification on any item, feel free to get that to me, and then I'll try to get a response to you as quickly as possible so that you have what you need to feel confident about what you'll be voting on Monday. Hope that this was informative for you. This was our first work session, and so we'll all get better as we continue to get accustomed to having the 2 board meetings a month. I'm going to turn the meeting now over back to our board president.
Okay, thank you all for coming to this meeting. Being that there is no further items to discuss, this meeting is adjourned.